Okay, so today we are diving into something pretty interesting, I think,
Yeah.
and maybe a little bit shadowy.
Right.
The American deep state.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a term that,
You hear it everywhere, right?
yeah, you hear it
Float around all the time.
especially after the Trump presidency, but
Right.
what does it actually mean?
Right. What does it?
Like, what are we even talking about?
Yeah, so to really unpack this, I think we should look at this scholarly article called The American Deep State,
Okay.
which was published in the Notre Dame Law Review.
Okay.
And this article kind of digs deep into how the American bureaucracy functions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, does it actually act as a check on presidential power?
Right.
And if it does deserve that deep state label that we kind of throw around so often.
Yeah. You know, when I hear deep state, I kind of think about, smoke-filled rooms and like shadowy figures making backroom deals. Is that what we're talking about here?
I mean, not really.
Okay. This article actually argues that the American deep state is really just this vast network of federal agencies, the people working in them, and everyone who's involved in those administrative tasks.
Oh, so less cloak and dagger.
Yeah, much less cloak and dagger.
More like, I don't know.
More like the nuts and bolts of government.
Yeah, okay, so like the EPA, the State Department,
Yeah.
Homeland Security.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the stuff that keeps the government running.
Right.
Okay, but
If
this article spends a lot of time debunking some myths
Right.
of the deep state.
Yeah.
Like this idea that it's this like super exclusive club
Yeah.
of like elites, right?
Like pulling the strings.
But isn't the bureaucracy
Yes. Right.
actually more diverse than Congress?
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
The article points out that the American bureaucracy actually has a larger percentage of women and minorities than Congress does.
Oh, wow.
And then financially, the average salary for federal employees is around $80,000 a year, which puts them, squarely in the middle class.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, not exactly a bunch of like
Yeah.
wealthy puppet masters.
not exactly.
Okay. All right.
So to go even further with that,
Yeah.
to kind of like shatter that shadowy image even more,
Okay.
the article also points out that American agencies operate under transparency laws,
Mm-hmm.
which makes them much more open than agencies in other countries.
Right.
And in fact, oftentimes even more transparent than Congress or the White House.
Well, okay. So that's surprising.
Yeah,
If they're not operating in secrecy,
right,
then how do they actually like
right.
exert influence?
Right.
How do they
Yeah, so it's
How do
less
you-
about
challenge a president?
Yeah, it's less about operating in secret and more about what the article calls bureaucratic activism.
Okay.
So they might leak reports to the press.
Okay.
They might write reports that are critical of administration policies,
Mhm.
or they might even file lawsuits.
Uh-huh.
Remember those EPA reports on climate change
Oh, yeah.
that were leaked to the New York Times?
Yeah.
That's a classic example
Okay.
of the American deep state in action,
Right.
but in a very public way.
Right. So it's less about
Uh-huh.
like cloak and dagger,
Right.
and it's more about like using the system to kind of push back.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
Okay. And it's
It's
like
also important to remember.
a monolithic entity.
Right. That's not like it's one big.
It's not like
one.
Yeah, it's geographically diverse too, right?
Yeah.
Most federal employees don't even work in Washington, D.C.
That's right.
You've got park rangers, you've got postal workers,
Yeah.
scientists all over the country.
And they probably all have different backgrounds, different specializations,
Totally.
different political affiliations even.
Absolutely. And the article actually notes that
Yeah.
partisan affiliations are pretty balanced within the bureaucracy.
Okay.
There is a slight plurality that leans Democrat,
Mm-hmm.
but
But the point is, it's not
like a
it's not like a unified force
unified force.
working against the will of the people.
Working against, okay, so
Yeah.
it's not shadowy.
Right.
It's not elitist.
Yeah.
It's not this like unified force.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is it doing?
Yeah. What is it actually doing?
What is its role in our political landscape?
Yeah.
Is it just about like keeping the lights on?
Yeah. Is it just about, is there something more?
Or is there something more to it?
The article argues that when bureaucratic pushback happens,
Mm-hmm.
that it's usually defensive in nature.
Okay.
So rather than aggressively pursuing some kind of like,
Mhm.
agenda of their own,
Okay.
it's more about resisting policies that they see as harmful or illegal.
Okay, so can you give me a concrete example of what that might look like, this
Yeah.
defensive pushback?
Yeah. So remember when career immigration officials sued President Obama over
Yeah.
his deferred action programs?
Okay, yeah.
Right. So they argued, you know, that those programs were actually inconsistent with existing immigration law.
Okay.
And so that's a perfect example, I think, of the deep state acting as a check
Okay.
on presidential power.
So they're not
But through legal channels.
they're not staging a coup.
Right.
They're trying to
They're trying to.
uphold the law
Right.
as they interpret it.
As they interpret it.
Okay, so and the article makes this really interesting argument that this type of bureaucratic resistance, right,
Yeah.
isn't some kind of like extra constitutional threat to democracy.
Right.
It's
Yes.
actually,
They say it's actually part of the American system of checks and balances.
oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying that the bureaucracy, this deep state,
Yeah.
could actually be a force for good
That's the argument.
in our political system.
Yeah.
Okay,
And it becomes especially relevant.
so it's a safeguard, not a saboteur.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it becomes especially relevant, I think. When you consider how much power Congress has delegated to the executive branch over the years,
Okay.
right? So the article argues that this independent bureaucracy, protected by civil service laws,
Okay.
actually becomes even more crucial
Okay.
as a check on presidential power,
Interesting.
especially since agency heads and political appointees tend to have very short tenures.
Right. So
Was-
it's the deep state with its career civil servants
Yeah.
and their long-term expertise
It does.
that provides a sense of
They're-
like continuity and stability.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Okay. And the article actually goes so far as to say that we should reclaim the term deep state
Yeah.
to describe the American system,
Mm-hmm.
but with an emphasis on the positives.
Right. Okay.
And
So they're talking about
it talks about this idea of
the depth.
bureaucratic depth.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. And
To contrast that with the...
so deep state doesn't sound as ominous when you put it that way.
Right. Exactly.
It's
that.
all about perspective, I guess. Yeah.
But, while they celebrate the strengths of this system,
Yeah.
they also point out some
There are some.
concerning trends
Yeah.
that could be undermining its ability to function effectively.
You're right.
Ooh, now I'm really interested.
Yeah.
Tell me more about these trends.
Yeah,
What are we
right.
talking about?
The article suggests that decades of outsourcing and marketization of the
Mhm.
bureaucracy have actually weakened it.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So essentially what they're saying is that this trend towards privatization
Mm-hmm.
has led to tenured civil servants
Okay.
being replaced with private contractors.
That's interesting because you hear a lot about bringing like
Yeah.
private sector efficiency to government.
Yeah.
But is that always a good thing?
That's the argument that's often made.
Okay.
But this article points out that there's a key difference.
Okay.
And that is that these contractors are often much more beholden
Okay.
to the administration. Because after all, they want to keep those government contracts coming.
They want to get paid.
Right, exactly. And so that can make them less likely to push back against the president,
Okay.
even if they disagree with the president's policies.
So by bringing in more contractors,
Yeah.
are we kind of like diluting
Yeah, are we diluting
the
it?
deep state's ability to push back?
The deep state's ability
It
to
act as a check.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the concern. And it's not just privatization that's raising red flags.
Okay.
There have also been efforts to actually strip away civil service protections,
Okay.
essentially converting government workers into at-will employees.
So making it easier to fire them if they don't
Exactly.
toe the line.
Right. And this can create a chilling effect
Mm.
and make government employees a lot less likely to speak up
Okay.
if they see something wrong or if they disagree with the policy.
And the article mentions some specific instances of this happening
Yeah.
during the Trump administration, right?
Yeah. So there were reports of Trump forcing out senior civil servants
Okay.
who didn't really align with his views.
Uh-huh.
And then you had the Secretary of the Interior at one point claiming that a third of his staff was disloyal.
Wow.
So these are pretty clear signs, I think,
Yeah.
that the deep state is losing its independence.
Okay, so
Yeah.
this all sounds pretty worrying if we're talking about the deep state as a safeguard.
Right.
What are the potential long-term implications of this weakening?
Well, the article suggests that this erosion of the deep state could have really significant consequences for how our government operates,
Okay.
especially during times of political turmoil,
Okay.
and that if this vital check on presidential power continues to weaken,
Right.
that it could really fundamentally change the balance of power
Wow.
in our government.
Okay, so this is all fascinating.
Yeah.
But I have to ask,
Yeah.
like, what does this mean for me?
Right.
For the average person, right? Why should I care about this deep state stuff?
Right.
Like, how does this affect my life?
That's a great question, and I think it's something we should all be thinking about.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy to kind of dismiss these issues as these abstract political debates,
Right.
but they actually have really real-world implications for all of us.
Okay.
You know, the effectiveness and independence of the deep state or the bureaucracy, you know, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
It directly impacts the quality of government services that we all receive, the regulations that are meant to protect us,
Right.
the policies that shape our society.
Right.
You know, think about it this way. Would you feel comfortable if the people who were responsible for things like, you know, food safety
Yeah.
or environmental protection or national security,
Yeah.
if those people were just easily swayed by political pressure or personal gain?
Right.
Or would you prefer if they had the security and the independence to actually make decisions based on their expertise and the law?
Based on the facts.
Even if those decisions are unpopular with the people in power.
You're right.
So,
it's not just about abstract political theory.
Yeah.
It's
about the stuff.
This is stuff that affects our everyday lives.
That affects our everyday lives. Exactly. And that's why it's so important to understand this role of the bureaucracy.
Okay.
And to engage in these conversations.
All right. So we've debunked some myths about the deep state.
Right.
We've explored both its strengths and its potential weaknesses.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to go back to this idea of reclaiming the term and focusing on the positive aspects.
Yeah.
Right. And you mentioned this concept of bureaucratic depth.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah, so
And why is it so important?
what is bureaucratic depth and why does it matter
And why does it matter?
for a healthy democracy? Well, think about it this way. You wouldn't want a heart surgeon with only like a few months of experience operating on you.
No, right?
I'd want someone with years of training.
You want someone who's seen it all.
Seen all sorts of different cases.
Right.
Knows how to handle any complication.
Right. Experience matters.
Right.
Especially when it comes to something like
Exactly.
heart surgery.
Yeah.
Or, you know,
We're running a government.
running a government.
Right.
Okay.
And so that's really where
Gotcha.
bureaucratic depth comes in.
Bureaucratic depth comes in.
Okay. It's about having these career civil servants
Right.
who have dedicated years, sometimes decades,
Okay.
to understanding the intricacies of their fields,
Right.
right? And they bring this wealth of knowledge and experience, institutional memory.
Right.
That's so valuable, I think,
Okay.
for ensuring that there's continuity and stability,
Right.
even as administrations change.
So it's not just about having people who know how to fill out the right forms.
Oh, exactly.
It's about having people who understand, like,
Yeah.
the bigger picture,
Right.
the historical context,
Historical.
the potential pitfalls
Exactly.
that could come up.
They can offer that long-term perspective
Right.
that elected officials with their, you know,
Shorter terms.
senators
I might not have.
might not have. Exactly.
Okay.
And so, and just as importantly,
Yeah.
it's about them having the independence
Okay.
to speak truth to power, to offer dissenting opinions, to challenge assumptions, even when it might be unpopular.
Right. It makes me think about those
Exactly.
EPA reports we were talking about.
Yeah.
Right. Like, those leaks probably came from career scientists.
Probably.
People who have dedicated their lives to
Right.
studying this stuff.
Yeah. People with
A deep understanding
really deep
of climate change.
who felt like they had a duty to speak out,
Yeah.
even if it meant going against what the administration
It meant risking their job.
Exactly. And that's a great example, I think,
Yeah.
of how bureaucratic depth
Right.
can act as a safeguard for democracy.
So it's about
Yeah, it's about making sure that the decisions are made based on evidence and expertise, not just political expediency.
Right. But we also don't want to be
You don't want a government that's
stuck in the past.
stuck in the past.
Clinging to
We need room for
dated ideas.
for new perspectives,
Right.
for innovation.
There's got to be room for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the role of political appointees
Okay.
comes in.
Right.
They bring new ideas, they bring new priorities.
It's not about pitting
Right.
the career civil servants
Right,
against the
exactly.
political appointees.
Us versus them.
It's about
how they
finding a way
can work together.
for them to work together.
Right, to leverage each other's strengths.
To leverage their strength.
To create a system that's both stable and adaptable.
Okay.
Right.
Wow, this has been a real eye-opener.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see that this whole
This is,
deep state debate
it really is
is
about,
really about these
yeah.
much bigger questions.
Yeah, these bigger questions about power and accountability.
Power and accountability
Yeah.
and the future of our democracy.
The future of our democracy, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to take a quick break,
Right.
and then we come back. We're going to continue this conversation.
Sounds good. They're talking about the depth of knowledge and experience within the bureaucracy,
Okay.
which they contrast with the kind of shallowness
Okay.
of political
If
appointees.
they're only there for a few years.
Right. They come and go with each administration.
Okay, so it's about having, both
Right.
the institutional knowledge,
Yeah.
but also those
A fresh perspective.
the fresh perspective.
Right,
Okay,
here.
so deep state, maybe not so
Maybe not so scary.
scary after all.
Right.
But the article, while it celebrates the strengths of the system,
Yeah.
it also points out
It also points
some
to-
concerning trends.
Yeah.
Ooh, tell me about these trends.
So they suggest that decades of outsourcing and marketization of the bureaucracy
Okay.
have actually weakened it.
Okay.
Essentially, what they're saying is that this trend towards privatization
Mm-hmm.
has led to tenured civil servants being replaced with private contractors.
So that's interesting because you hear a lot about
Right.
bringing private sector efficiency
Right.
to government, but is that always a good thing?
Yeah, that's the argument that's often made. But this article points out
Yeah.
that there's a key difference, and that is that these contractors are often much more beholden to the administration.
Okay.
After all, they want to keep those government contracts coming.
They want to get paid.
Exactly. And so that can make them a lot less likely
Right.
to push back against the president.
Less likely to rock the boat.
Exactly.
Okay, so
Even if they disagree.
so by bringing in more contractors,
Right.
are we kind of are we diluting the
The
deep state's ability to push back
deep state's ability to act as that check.
as that check? Okay.
Yeah.
And it's not just privatization.
And it's not just privatization.
That's raising red flags.
There have also been efforts to actually strip away
Okay.
civil service protections,
Okay.
essentially converting government workers into at-will employees.
Making it easier to fire them if they don't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this can create a chilling effect,
Yep.
make government employees much less likely to speak up
Okay.
if they see something wrong or disagree with a policy.
And they mentioned some specific instances of this
Yeah.
happening during the Trump administration.
Right. So there were reports of Trump forcing out senior civil servants
Okay.
who didn't align with his views.
Mm-hmm.
And you had the Secretary of the Interior at one point claiming that a third of his staff
Wow.
was disloyal.
Okay.
So these are pretty clear signs, I think, that the deep state is losing its independence.
This all sounds pretty worrying.
Yeah.
If we're talking about the deep state
Yeah.
as a safeguard,
Right.
what are the potential long-term implications?
So the article suggests that this erosion of the deep state could have really significant consequences for how our government operates,
Mhm.
especially during times of political turmoil.
Okay.
And that if this vital check on presidential power continues to weaken,
Yeah.
it could really fundamentally change the balance of power.
In our government.
So in our government, yeah.
This is all fascinating, but I have to ask,
Sure.
what does this mean for me? For the average person?
Yeah, why should I care?
Yeah, why should I care about all this deep state stuff?
Right.
How does it affect my life?
That's a great question, and I think it's something we should all be thinking about.
Okay.
It's easy to dismiss these issues as these abstract political debates.
Yeah.
But they really do have real-world implications for all of us.
Okay.
The effectiveness and independence of the deep state or the bureaucracy, whatever you want to call it,
Right.
directly impacts the quality of government services that we receive,
Okay.
the regulations that are meant to protect us,
Mm.
the policies that shape our society.
Right. Right.
Think about it this way.
Yeah.
Would you feel comfortable
Yeah.
if the people who are responsible for things like food safety,
Right.
environmental protection,
Mm-hmm.
national security,
Yeah.
were easily swayed
Hmm.
by political pressure or personal gain?
Right. You want them to be making decisions based on
Exactly.
the fact.
Based on their expertise, based on the law,
Right.
even if those decisions are unpopular with the people in power.
You're right. This isn't just about abstract political theory.
Yeah.
It's about stuff that affects
Stuff that affects our everyday lives.
our everyday lives.
Exactly. And that's why I think it's so important to understand this role
Right.
of the bureaucracy
Right.
and to engage in these conversations.
So we've debunked some myths about the deep state.
Yeah.
We've explored its strengths, its potential weaknesses.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to go back to this idea of reclaiming the term,
Yeah.
focusing on the positive aspects,
Yeah.
right? And you mentioned this concept of bureaucratic depth.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
And why is it so important?
What is bureaucratic depth and why does it matter
Yeah.
for a healthy democracy?
Yeah, for a healthy democracy.
So bureaucratic depth,
yeah.
right? It's kind of like,
Yeah, it sounds like something out of a really old dusty library.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's really about having those career civil servants who have dedicated, years, sometimes decades,
Okay.
to understanding the intricacies of their fields.
Okay.
And they bring this wealth of knowledge and experience and institutional memory.
Right. So it's not just
Becomes valuable.
about people who can fill out the right form.
Right.
They understand the bigger picture.
Exactly. It's about
understand the historical context.
Yeah, the historical context, the potential pitfalls
Right, right.
that could come up.
Yeah, they can
offer that long-term perspective that,
Right.
Elected officials with their shorter terms might not have.
Right.
And just as importantly, it's about them having the independence to speak truth to power,
Yeah.
to offer dissenting opinions, to challenge assumptions,
Yeah.
even when it's unpopular.
That makes me think about those EPA reports we were talking about earlier.
Exactly.
Right? Those leaks probably came from career scientists.
Yeah.
People who have dedicated their lives to understanding this stuff.
People with a deep understanding
Right. And they felt like they had a duty to speak out.
of climate change. Yeah, and felt like they had a duty to speak out.
Even if it meant
Going against the administration.
losing their jobs.
Exactly. And I think that's a great example of how bureaucratic depth
Yeah.
can act as a safeguard for democracy.
So it's about making sure that decisions are being made
Exactly.
based on evidence and expertise.
Yes. Yeah, based on evidence and expertise, not just political expediency.
Right. But we also don't want a government that's
Right. We don't want
stuck in the
the
past.
government stuck in the past, clinging to outdated ideas, right?
Right.
We need room for new perspective,
Yeah.
for innovation.
There's got to be a balance.
Absolutely. And that's where I think the role of political appointees comes in.
Okay.
Right. They bring new ideas, new priorities.
So it's not about
and they can help.
pitting the career civil servants.
Right. It's not an us versus them.
Yeah. Against the political appointees.
It's about how they can work together.
Right. It's about finding that balance.
Yeah. To leverage each other's strengths.
Right.
To create a system that's both stable and adaptable.
This has been a real eye-opener for me.
Yeah, me too.
I'm starting to see that this whole deep state debate is really about these much bigger questions.
It really is about these bigger questions of power, accountability,
Accountability.
the future of our democracy.
In the future of our democracy.
Yeah. And as we wrap up our deep dive today, I want to leave you with this thought.
Okay.
The deep state isn't some shadowy force to be feared or demonized.
Okay.
It's a complex and essential part of our democracy, filled with really dedicated individuals working behind the scenes
Right.
to keep our government running and to serve the public good. So the next time you hear that term deep state,
Yeah.
remember it's not just about faceless bureaucrats.
Right.
It's about the people who ensure our food is safe, our air and water are clean,
Right.
our borders are secure, our rights are protected.
Yeah.
It's about people who dedicate their careers to public service, often without the recognition or the accolades that they deserve.
So let's try to engage in these conversations with nuance and understanding.
With nuance and understanding.
Recognizing that,
That's
a strong and independent and accountable deep state
right.
or bureaucracy
Or bureaucracy
is crucial for a thriving democracy.
is essential for a healthy democracy.